And my great pleasure today to welcome Dr. Ronen Hoffman in this talk organized by EO Entrepreneurs Organization Paris. Entrepreneurs Organization, for those of you who don't know, it's a worldwide organization which is gathering 14,000 entrepreneurs around the globe. And of course, for these times, it's very important to us to keep together and also to have interesting discussions. And I'm Victoria Mikhailova. I'm a Sensemaker co-founder and director, and I am learning chair at EO Paris. And I'm very happy to welcome today you, Ronen. So Dr. Ronen Hoffman is an Israeli expert in crisis management, politician, having been a Knesset Israeli parliament member for a couple of years. And you're also teaching today the crisis management, and you know a lot about that. And today I hope that we will have during 1 hour interesting talk about what crisis it is and what is what are the good tools for managing it. So thank you very much for joining us for this discussion, Ronen. And I have a very first question for you. I was asking myself, so the world in which we are living now, is it a world of chaos? Because we have so many events and it doesn't look anymore like we have the stable, non-crisis time. It's a lot of events coming closer and closer. So what is your perspective on that?
I would say that, first of all, good evening, and thank you, Victoria. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for joining and for being with us. I think that there has always been an element of chaos in people's life, in the world. But in the past, since people were not connected to each other through social media, in the past, the chaotic arena was reserved for decision makers mainly, and people who are not part of governments, or are not part of decision making, or are not part of national security councils or anything like that, did not always feel the chaos. People used to, in the past, people used to get messages from officials, from authorities, and only a little bit of the chaotic element was people were exposed only to such, to a limit of what. Today, since everybody is connected, and the messages and the communication with the leaders is not a top-down of a style, but it's also bottom-up, and it's not sometimes, or most of the time, it's not. There's no hierarchy. Everybody can express his views or her views, and everybody can hear. And so everybody's part of it. Everybody's part of the chaos. And it looks like more and more people are exposed and get aware of the fact that we live in chaos. We always live in chaos. And I don't think there is a tremendous change, I would say, unless, except for this element of people being more aware of it. Now, Victoria, let me tell you something. Chaos is, and uncertainty is, more than anything, is a mental experience. Things can go one way or another way. Developments are getting developed and changed and all that. But the chaos itself, of course, chaos is a physical phenomenon and all that, but the way we should refer to it as entrepreneurs and directors and managers, I think we should look at the psychological and behavioral aspect of chaos. Chaos is what we experience. If we get used to changes, to rapid changes, if we can prepare ourselves for the uncertainty, even if we don't know, if we become friendly with chaos, with the experience of chaos, so there's much less chaos, and it's not such a big problem.
Okay, so I'm very curious to know about the way how in the professions which are dealing with the chaos, with the psychological part of it, and but also with the uncertainty, which is the environmental part of the chaos, what is the general approach? Do you see the different kinds of this chaotic or uncertainty? How do you qualify different types of this environment, and how you deal with the external and internal psychological part of it?
Yeah, but this is very interesting because I think that in many ways, when you go to the supermarket in your neighborhood and you see how people are acting, the competition over the shelves, and the way that people are treating each other, with the masks and with the need to keep distance, in a way, even a supermarket becomes a zone conflict, right? Conflict zone. People are acting, in a very sometimes radical way because they are afraid, and because, and in many ways, I think that what we experience in our neighborhoods and in our local environment is similar to what leaders do in international relations, in regulations, in relations between governments. I'm saying it because the environmental aspect of the crisis and the chaos is something that should be treated in an, I would say, integrated way by cooperation between leaders and states and governments and international bodies. And what we see, unfortunately, is exactly the opposite. Is there's no much cooperation between governments and states at the moment or at the peak of the crisis. There is a very, I would say, harsh competition between states. Who is going to purchase from other states what is needed for hospitals and equipments and all that. There is no worldwide leadership that which is looking on the comprehensive aspect or picture of the crisis, and there's no group of leaders who sit together, even via the Zoom, but really make decisions for more than their own public on their own audience. So instead of cooperating, instead of being together in this, what we see, unfortunately, is that each one is protecting his own people, which is natural in a way. But on the other hand, we are missing an opportunity to experience the potential of cooperation, of global cooperation, of recruiting all the resources that we have. And each one of us has something different that we develop with the time. But we're missing the opportunity in real time to share and to help each other and to cooperate and to maximize the effect of cooperation in order to fight the crisis.
So I hear, thank you very much, Ronen, for this explanation. I hear that the cooperation and cooperative skills are the most important for the entrepreneurs as well to go through the crisis and to manage it. And this morning I heard a very nice story about Hermes, French company in luxury, that it goes back to the 1929 crisis, and that they have been supported by one of their suppliers to give them some credits to open the store in New York. And till now they are, entertaining a very nice cooperation with this supplier, and it was like a company producing notebooks, an editor and printing company. So what do you think are the necessary skills for the entrepreneurs to keep the organization going through the crisis and keeping them working during the crisis times?
I think entrepreneurs have a major role in helping coping with crisis and challenges and chaos and uncertainty. Because if you can kind of mapping out the different professions in the world, you can see that most of the professions are trained to plan in advance. And once somebody has plans, they follow the plans and they feel, they are very uncomfortable. Sometimes even they feel some kind of anxiety if things are going not according to the plan. Now, with entrepreneurs, it's different. Entrepreneurs, to begin with, are people who are creative in their thinking, flexible in their thinking what we say out of the box, always ready to changes into flexible situations. And so, of course, the entrepreneurs can help in coping with crisis and management, because in crisis and management, the amount of uncertainty and the need to get adjusted to rapid changes is much higher. I think, and again, I don't know of leaders, political leaders. I come from politics and from the entrepreneurship, so I can see both sides. Unfortunately, I don't see leaders who invite entrepreneurs at the moment to help them to make decisions, although I think it's really needed. I would expect my leaders here in Israel, and any leader, any political leader, to be aware of the fact that entrepreneurs are the people who can really improvise better than anything else, can really be creative more than anything else, and can really, by being creative as an entrepreneur, it doesn't mean that you're not responsible. It doesn't mean that you lose your path. It just means that you can think in more flexible and creative ways, because you're used to, either because it's your personality to begin with, or you are trained and you have experience in doing so. So if I was a prime minister today, I would surround myself by entrepreneurs and I would feel very secure.
Okay, thank you. So I hear that governments need to go to the entrepreneurs and to learn something from them, and also to bring them to the action. And what can entrepreneurs learn from the politics or for the crisis management, like maybe military? Can you deliver to us some keys of how it's managed or taught?
Yes, I think that the need to understand structures and big pictures is something that governmental officials and military officials and generals and military leaders are used to. And sometimes entrepreneurs feel that the structure is not very important, or they're more flexible and it's more about more of improvisation and initiative than going through a path. So I think that the combination of on one hand being flexible and innovative, on the other hand being very structured, learning from governments, from states, from organizations, international organizations. Sometimes, there are structures that we need to take into considerations, and it helps us. At least it helped me. I was a negotiator on behalf of my government, but at the same time I was entrepreneur. So I found it very interesting and very helping that when I was too creative, I could find some help from my colleagues in the government of how to find again the borders and the structures. And when I was going too far to the borders and to the structures, I again recruited the part of me which is entrepreneur. So the combination or the interface between entrepreneurship and long-term planning and concrete structures, the interface is very good and very helpful.
Mm-hmm. And okay, so I hear about the improvisation, and I also had some questions from my friends and entrepreneurs before this conference about how to deal with hard decisions, because it is easy to say to improvise, and when you need to fire the people, and also to decide what kind of assets to keep, people or something else. The decisions are not that obvious. What is your perspective on that? How far should people go with the improvisation?
Well, first of all, I'll get to your question, but first of all, I want to say that I think that maybe the most difficult part and aspect of decision making in a crisis is the need to think in numbers and statistics. Each person is a story. Each one of us is a whole world unto itself. And when you sit in a situation room and you have to make decisions, and you say, okay, if I open the economy, then 50,000 people will die. If I close it, then 20. So you speak in numbers and you distance yourself from the human stories and from the feelings and from emotions, which is needed sometimes. But on the other hand, I think that improvisation and using intuition and using sentiments is also needed. And again, the key and the successful, I would say, point here is how to combine the two and how to know when I'm supposed to keep distance from the human part of it, and when I should be more human than anything else. And I don't think we should divide it to entrepreneurs or to government officials. I think it's true for each one of us, regardless what our profession is. And this is something that unfortunately we don't teach. Universities don't teach in business schools or in political science or in decision making. We use game theories. We use all kind of models, very rational models. In most of the times, using emotions and being being very close to the story is considered to be problematic in decision making. But I don't think so. I think that we should be both in a way. It's very difficult, very hard. But again, it's a training kind of thing. We should be trained not to push away our emotions when we make decisions. It's okay to feel empathy to the person, even if we have to make hard decision towards this person or these people. It's okay to be soft and tough at the same time. It's okay to be warm and cold at the same time. Not only okay, it's a necessity if we are good decision makers. But it's hard to teach it. It's hard to learn it, and we need to put more emphasis on the awareness that it's not black and white, good and bad. It's everything in it, and we need to find the right combination and the integration between all these aspects together.
Mm-hmm. Well, so it's not at the schools and not at the business schools today that people can develop this competence. So how to do if you want to learn how to be soft and hard at the same time, how to think figures, numbers, and how to feel emotions at the same time. And yeah, so how people can do that right now?
Right now, I think the first, I would say, condition would be not to be afraid. Not to be afraid. If sometimes if I think about myself that I'm a good decision maker, and I find myself crying when I hear a story or when I see somebody, then some people tend to think, oh, okay, it's not me. I should not be that way. I should not behave this way. So first of all, I think we should be more, I don't want to say soft, but more tolerance with ourselves. There's no good and bad in these things, especially not in crisis. Leaders can be compassionate. Leaders need to be compassionate. So what we need to do is to be open. I mean, first of all, to be open and not to be so, self-criticism is good, but not now. Now we should understand that we are part of the world which is experiencing something which is extreme, and we should be okay with the fact that we don't have an answer at any given moment to any problem. It takes time. It takes time to digest it. It takes time to know what we feel, what we believe. It's okay. We're human beings. We're not computers. We're not machines. We're human beings, and we should respect the fact that we are human beings and we're not perfect. And I think that the competitive societies with the high grades and the, pushing our kids to be excellent in everything. I can understand it. It's appealing, but at the same time, it's limiting the skills of our children when in the future they will have to cope with crisis, because we forget the soft skills. We forget to let them feel that this is okay to be not perfect sometimes, and to even to lose sometimes. Losing something, it doesn't mean that we are losers. Sometimes to be a winner is to be okay with the fact that we lose from time to time. And I know it's more complicated than we would hope it to be. But as complicated as it is, we need to that's what we need to be aware of and to be able to live with.
Should we get rid of some beliefs that worked for us in the past and not anymore in the future?
Well, it's a big question. It will be, I think the answer is yes. But if you ask me what are exactly the beliefs, I think we will need more time to know. But there are a few beliefs which I think that, at least the way I see it, when I look at again decision making, when I look at the president of the United States, for example, the isolation kind of policy, okay, to make America great again, just as an example, right? So to make America great again, or to make any country great again, to make any group great, or to make any family great, to make any person great, then you can take few approaches. You can bring yourself to a place where you allow yourself to feel more trust and trust people and more cooperative. Or you can isolate yourself and your group and your families and be very competitive. And I think that with more and more, the time passes, I think more and more groups and more businesses and more governments are looking for isolation rather than cooperation and openness. And I think this is one of the beliefs we should leave behind. Because in times like now, in times of crisis, we would have been in a much better place if we would have trusted each other and not be so suspicious. And if we would exercise cooperation and rather than only competition. And I think it's also, when we speak about conflicts, okay, the crisis is going to leave many businesses and companies in a very bad shape. Clients who are not paying, tenders who are not paying the landlords and all that. What's going to happen? Is everybody going to the court to sue? Going to sue each other and find ourselves in conflicts forever? Well, there's something in us saying, okay, we're looking for justice. But on the other hand, it's a force majeure for all of us. It's there's no bad intentions in it. It's not a human bad intentions in creating this crisis. I mean, probably, unless we'll find something which we don't know. So what I'm saying is that I think we should kind of not forget, but at least leave aside for the time being the option, and we do have the option to fight all the time and to be harsh. But I think that we should leave it aside for a second and find ways to rebuild trust between people, trust between groups, trust between companies and between states.
But does it mean, I hear that you're saying that this is an exceptional period, not of forgetting, but of forgiving each other, and also rebuilding the connections between the people, between the companies, between the countries, and also like forgive certain debts to each other, to review the sense of the justice, and the cooperation is key in everything that you said till now, is it?
Absolutely. And again, to a limit. I don't think we should give up on anything, our interests and all that. I'm not That's not what I'm suggesting. But I'm suggesting to compromise, to find a middle way, and to remember and to understand that we are all in it. We are all victims of this. It's not that one of us is the is the criminal and the other one is the victim. There's no criminal here. I mean, in this, we're all victims to the crisis, and so if people are acting in an aggressive way, it's because they're afraid, because they're hurt, because they are in anxiety, because of the uncertainty and the chaos, and we should forgive to a certain extent, but after the crisis, we'll have time to sit and to talk and to think what can we do better as in preparing for the next challenge. And then, so I'm saying compromise. Don't give up everything, but don't insist on anything at the moment, because everybody's suffering.
Okay. And do you have any example from your experience about the interesting story about the compromising?
Yes. I've been involved in negotiations, in maybe one of the most sensitive negotiations ever, and this is the peace negotiations between the Israelis and the Arabs. And I can tell you that, again, more than game theories, more than models, statistics, and all that, negotiations, conflicts, and compromises are about psychology and culture more than anything else. And the psychological aspects and the cultural aspects of conflicts and negotiations play a major role in the conflict management and also in conflict resolution. So, and this is very interesting at the moment, because I wonder if we will have to negotiate online more than we used to do in the past. So we should not be able to fly in order to meet, to negotiate a deal or anything. And it bothers me. I tell you why, because I truly, and I've experienced it for many years, that when you negotiate, it's not maybe all about, but a lot about face-to-face body language, being in the same room. It's about nuances. And in negotiations, you have to involve intuition, and you have to involve surprises, and you have to involve deciding on the side in real time. And it's very hard to decide in real time and to feel little nuances when we talk through the social media. For that, we have to be near each other, and we have to touch each other almost, and we have to be together. And so, according to my experience, negotiations will change, unfortunately, and negotiators in the future, some of them, will not be able to feel that nuances, and they will have to make the decisions while negotiating. They will have to base their decisions on other elements rather than this face-to-face situation. Let me give you an example. Icebreakers. Some negotiations, most of negotiations, I would say, especially when we speak about conflicts, when you don't have a mutual trust in the room. Then you have to build trust. In order to build mutual trust, you need to find icebreakers. How do you break the ice? It's very hard to break the ice, even telling a joke, when we are far away from each other. So all these things, all these little gestures and tactics of negotiations are about maybe to change. And we'll see what it will bring in the future. But I like the way it was, and I hope that at least to a certain extent we'll be able to go back and negotiate in Camp David, around the campfire, with a guitar, when we can look at each other's eyes and feel the nuances between people.
So what do you think? Because when you were speaking, I was thinking about the fact that we are kind of isolated because we are staying homes for a major part of us. But also, as myself, I've never been so much connected to the people in permanence, working remotely with my partners, with my co-founders, with my teams, and talking very much around me. And I feel very much connected. So talking about the trust, is there a new way of building e-trust, and how, like, the, let's say, the cyber verification of your partner is coming into that? Because you cannot go physically to check who is your partner if you start a new business with a new partner in a new country, and you are disconnected totally physically from there.
I think that, and I've read some psychological research. I think that when people feel connected through social media, they feel connected cognitively. So they feel connected in terms of the information and the memory, and so they don't feel isolated because there's more and more information that get to them, and they'll feel connected. But this is information, it's a cognitive, it's not the emotional side. And for emotional side, you need senses. You need to.
Yeah, of course, my company's name is Sensemakers, so it's also about the, how to say, physical senses, not just the sense like direction or meaning, of course, as well. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And senses is I think the key in the trust building, and because at the end of the day, it's about feelings. It's about again, intuition. It's not about only rational, informative considerations. It's about things that sometimes we cannot explain, but we feel, and we cannot put in models because there's no number to this feeling. And for that, we need to be together. We need to be together. So, but I'm optimistic in a way because I don't think that that this social distancing will be forced forever. I think, well, there will be a tendency to do more things online and to get more services online. But at the end of the day, I think that people there's a psychological need of people to be connected not only through social media, but also by using senses. And so people would continue to meet and would continue to be together, and would continue to negotiate and to work together, even if the regulations will be a little bit different.
Mm-hmm. So what do you think about the assumption that we need to review the ideas on which we are building the businesses today, like the approach to the negotiation, the approach in particular to how we define the targets, because according to what you said, we are staying open. It means that we don't need to fix something very very steady. We need to create all the time and not be fixed with the how to say, very hard directions. Are we entering the soft era of soft skills, of soft business, of soft whatever?
Yes, I think that again, I think the two main elements of our behavior when it comes to business is trust and certainty. Now, if we spoke a little bit about trust, so I leave it aside. Again, psychological research show that when most of the people live in or face uncertainty and chaos, it leads to sometimes anxiety, or at least they feel very uncomfortable. And this is the key. This is what we need to change. We need to come to terms with the fact that our world is chaotic, and it's not a problem. I know for many of us it seems like a problem, but as soon as we will be able to come to terms that we can be friends or we can be friendly with uncertainty to a certain extent. And we should be open to change our plans. Then it would help us to run our businesses in the future. Because yes, we will need to be much more flexible in the future. We don't know how to predict and how to assess what the future will bring. This is the main conclusion.
Okay.
And so don't.
Yeah. Go on. I'm very interested.
So I'm saying if we don't have tools, and this is, I think, if you ask me, what is the big surprise of the whole thing? The big surprise is that we, with all the technology, with all the sophistication, with everything that we developed as human beings, we have very few tools to predict our future. And
so you are killing all the big data and prediction industry by saying that.
I'm not. Maybe, but you know, we can. You know, Bill Gates 5 years ago gave his TED talk about how we expect to face a disease and all that, and it was very nice. And you know, he got some applause at the end of the TED talk, but nobody did anything with it. So yeah, few people would, you know, have this some sense of what will happen, but the world is not prepared, or is not preparing itself, because and let me tell you from my field, politics. 99% of the revolutions, of political changes, were not predicted. You know, the changes in the Soviet Union, former Soviet Union, the changes in the Cold War, the Arab Spring in my region, you know, the collapse of Arab regimes, the victory of Donald Trump I mean, with all the tools that we have, statistics, numbers, public opinion surveys, with all that, we fail at the end of the day to predict the future, which is okay. And for many people, it's not okay yet. But if we need to do something in order to continue to manage our business in the future successfully, is to really feel okay with the fact that we decide that what we see, we're limited in the side where we can see. It's okay. Therefore, in order to face this, we need to be more flexible. We need to think out of the box. We need to be able not to get scared if plans are changing. And for entrepreneurs, it should be easier than for anybody else, because to begin with, entrepreneurship is about creation, creativity, and about flexibility.
Well, so what you said that it was not predicted, but some people predicted that. Let's see the side of the movies and the literature. And I was thinking, so should now the business hire the playwriters for predicting, maybe not predicting, but for designing the future and for creating kind of scenarios of the future, and staying flexible to play it like an immersive theater of improvisation. Do you, for example, teach that in the school where you are a lecturer?
Yes, of course. Look, it's along the history this way. You know, Jules Verne and Asimov and all, you know, the big writers and authors. You know, they're always. But people tend to refer to it as fiction. You know, as something which is not real. But this is you know, it's real, and this is something that you know, we predict that it will happen sometimes, but we don't know when. And we don't know to what extent. And the fact that it's in movies, and the fact that it's in you know, in books, but the leaderships and the governments are not preparing themselves, and they're not preparing it's crazy, you know. So again, there's no integrated you know, preparedness for it.
Okay, I have a question from one of the people, one of our guests, Izuro, who is asking, during the crisis, especially what we are going through today, how should one plan their investments on physical assets or financial assets? Should be more on property, gold, stocks, unit trust, etc. So how fiction can help to answer this question. This is me adding that.
Yes, yes. So first of all, I think we should think about it when we think about future and about possibilities and possible scenarios. I think we should divide it to near future and long term. Now, in the near future, I think we can say some things about the near future. We have enough tools to do this. But for the long term, it's more tricky. And when we invest, we need, first of all, to spread our investment to near future and to long-term future in order to minimize the risk. Now, for example, biotech, energy, technology which deals with the long term, it's one thing, very speculative.
Yeah.
But I would suggest if I was the investor, I would say at least quarter of my investment would go to the long-term future. Then in the near future, I would try to think what is very speculative and what is more solid. Now, when I look at real estate, for example, I would say real estate in the short term, could lose value, but I wouldn't be so worried about assets, real estate assets in the center of the world, in growing cities, but this is me, So I think that when it comes to investment, we also bring our personalities more than anything else. Risk assessment, risk taking. Each one of us is different in this respect.
And what do you think about the assumption that people working for the companies are they also assets, and how manage the people and keeping the right teams during the crisis time? Do you have any definition of the good, appropriate people for the crisis management teams?
Yes, I absolutely, definitely. I think that people are the most important asset of anything, But at the same time, I think that schools, universities did not invest enough in this asset, which is people. Because again, when I look at, and in a way it's hard for me to say it because I teach at the university for many, many years. So I don't want to talk against, something which but to be honest, and I want to be honest, I would tell you that universities don't necessarily prepare people for the real life. And I think that that the investment in that asset, in people, the training, the working with people, the models that we teach the students, the frontal methodology, which is in a way passé. I think we should work in teams. We should do much more teamwork and simulation rather than a teacher who stands in front. All of these things are changing too slowly. And when I look at universities, of course, the technologies and the social media and the fact that now teachers, lecturers can lecture via Zoom is a great development. But at the same time, I still think that many aspects of teaching and training people to the real world stay the same for too long. So what I'm saying is that yes, people are the asset, but we need to train people a little bit different than we do, or maybe a lot different than we do. We need to make sure that our students and people who get trained would be experienced and would be touch reality much before they graduate from schools. They should be involved in simulation. They should be involved in real, stage. They should do all kind of things in order to prepare them to the real world, not just to be able to read numbers and read Excels.
Thank you for answering this question. And you know that I'm very sensitive for this topic of education and also the importance of the partnership and cooperation skills. And also I would add for people who are not familiar with EO, Entrepreneurs Organization, one of the purposes of this organization is also building the cooperation between people involved in the businesses and entrepreneurs. And we pay attention and put energy on the developing the soft skills and having some learning events like what we're having today. I have a question, sir. How the cooperative skills, maybe you have this information, have been taught through the history for the people of state, for the government, for the diplomats? Is there anything that we can learn from?
Maybe I can illustrate something. Let me take you to the mid-90s when Boris Yeltsin was the president of Russia and Bill Clinton was the president of the United States. And they negotiated, they had several rounds of negotiation over a very sensitive and heavy topic. And it's the missiles, Europe with unconventional warheads and all that. And one of the times Boris Yeltsin came to the United States, came to New York and Washington, and the teams and the leaders met and the teams sat together, and there was a real tension in the room. And they start to, the officials started to leak to the press from the negotiating room that the tension is rising, and that the negotiations are going to fail. And again, it's a very sensitive and serious topic, and it's worrying if the negotiation fail. And then in the middle of the negotiations, the leaders decided to go out for a stakeout to talk to the journalists. They came out, very serious faces. And maybe let me show you a short video of what happened and how the negotiation actually changed. Let me see, just a second, please. I'm sorry, here it is. Please tell me.
В Организации Объединенных Наций вы пререкли, что наша встреча сегодня, она провалится.
And this is all due to you, because coming from my statement yesterday in the United Nations, and if you looked at the press reports, one could see that what you were writing was that today's meeting with President Bill Clinton was going to be a disaster.
Так вот, не первый раз я вам говорю, что вы провалились.
Well, now for the first time I can tell you that you're a disaster.
Be sure you get the right attribution there.
Я надеюсь, что вы правильно все это поняли.
Okay, so it went on and on and on and on, and what happened was that when they came back to the room, the atmosphere of the negotiations all of a sudden just changed, and believe it or not, it had impact on the substance of the topics and the negotiations, and this little moment has actually changed the root of the negotiations, and it's just one example of many, which some of them I've been involved, of how flexible and sometimes without planning it, you allow yourself to be a little bit more open, a little bit more flexible, and it can change serious things as well.
Yeah, yeah, I see what you want to say. We call it in the okay behavior, and maybe the interesting idea that I take away from this discussion is that entrepreneurs during these times need to stay okay, flexible, open, and also to surround themselves with this kind of people who are flexible enough, having the good cooperation abilities, and bringing this flexibility, but also the sense of humor, creativity.
Exactly, not to be afraid of our behavior, and not to be so critical, about little nuances. Quite the opposite. We are different people, and look, let me tell you something which is obvious, but most of the people tend to forget. When we deal with social sciences, when, business, psychology, political science, it's not exact science. It's a social science. And we expect sometimes, being rational people, and we want to have very clear answers and very clear tools that to help us to manage the things the way we want to achieve them. We tend to forget that at the end of the day, it's just social science. It's not mathematics, it's not physics. And I think I have a lot of respect to the need of people to get social sciences as close as possible to exact sciences. But it will always take, there's always be a gap, because we're human beings and because we're not perfect again, and we're not always rational. So entrepreneurs, again, it brings me to the first point. Entrepreneurs, usually, to begin with, they are much more open. Excuse me for generalizing, right? But by definition, I think, to initiate and to be innovative and to be creative, it puts you from stage one on the stage where you have to be flexible, and it's a great advantage always. And I think it's a great advantage in times of crisis, especially.
Thank you. Ronen, I would like to ask you to finish this sentence. So during the time of crisis, keep calm and
trust yourself and trust the people around you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having shared your ideas and your thoughts and also secrets with us. Thank you very much. So I remind that you've been hosting Dr. Ronen Hoffman tonight at EO Paris, and you are very welcome to write your questions. We have still a couple of minutes left, and also to connect with us on the LinkedIn and Facebook, and also if you're interested, if you're in Paris, to thank you Isuro, to join EO Paris. Of course, we are having the physical sessions, and we are welcoming people from outside, and also invite the entrepreneurs to join our club. And during these times, we will be more than happy to run these online sessions. And thank you again, and I wish good business, good health, and a lot of fun and flexibility, cooperation, and creativity to all of you. Yes, and I will, before we leave, I will read one of the comments coming from Madina Estefan. Human factor is a cornerstone in crisis and most unpredictable. What is your most strong human quality? I think, Ronen, it's for you.
Are you sure it's for me? Maybe it's for you.
Let's see if you have the same.
I think I'm a good listener. I think if you ask me what is my strongest skill, is that I really like, and I think if you allow me to say, I know how to listen to people.
Thank you. Thank you very much for sharing this. I am not sure that I have this one as like the first one coming into my mind, but I think I have a lot of flexibility, and definitely I value very much the cooperation, and that's what we want to promote in EO Paris. So thank you again. Have good time tonight. Bye bye, guys.
Bye. Thank you. Thank you very much.